Welcome to the presentation, High School PBIS Implementation. I first want to go over a term that you will hear me use numerous times throughout this presentation, fidelity, which means demonstrated by continuing loyalty and support. Fidelity is key for my research, secondary PBIS implementation. Each district in Ohio, per the Ohio Administrative Code, effective August 1st, 2013, implemented PBIS. PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Intervention Support on a statewide basis. The Ohio PBIS Network in 2018 states that PBIS is a prevention-oriented process and not a program. PBIS is a process that supports the needs of a school, the culture of the school, by assisting school personnel in adopting and organizing evidence-based interventions that enhances academic and social behavior outcomes for students. According to PBIS Office of Special Education Programs, there are thousands of high schools that are currently implementing or who have recently implemented PBIS, but the research specific to high school implementation is still emerging. The Ohio Department of Education released general guidelines for school-wide PBIS execution to school leaders, but it's unclear whether these guidelines address all the variables necessary to ensure the success of PBIS. Bandura described a person's sense of efficacy as a judgment of his or her capabilities to structure a course of action to produce a desired outcome. Principals may feel efficacious for leading in particular contexts, but not in others, depending upon the perceived similarities of the task, according to the Shannon, Moran, and Gareis 2004. A principal's efficacy may fluctuate depending on the building reform initiative. A robust sense of efficacy is necessary to sustain the productive attentional focus and perseverance of effort needed for the success of organizational goals, according to Wood and Bandura, 1989. The background of literature. As a result of the many literature review I did, a gap for collective efficacy and perceptual congruence research at a secondary level was revealed. Specific secondary organizational complexity that were not identified by numerous researchers was given as a rationale for not including high school personnel. It's possible that as I conduct my research at secondary level, I will discover organizational complexities that will have to be addressed and mitigated to maintain the integrity of my study. Numerous studies have examined overall leadership efficacy, and my study will investigate a component of leadership efficacy: secondary principals' efficacy for implementing the PBIS framework with fidelity. This study will investigate the impact a high school principal's efficacy for PBIS implementation has on the teacher's efficacy for PBIS implementation. Ware and Casantas in 2011 did a study that supported the relationship between principal efficacy and teacher motivational constructs, such as teacher efficacy, collective efficacy, and teacher commitment. Investigating the relationship between the principals and teacher efficacy will provide data about the collective efficacy for building-wide implementation of PBIS. Interviews with principals and teachers will uncover intentional strategies utilized to increase collective efficacy and recommendations if collective efficacy has declined or was just non-existent. The purpose of the study: 3 research questions. Is there a difference between a high school principal's overall leadership efficacy measured by the efficacy to implement with fidelity and sustain the PBIS framework? Is there a difference between the principal's perceived efficacy to implement with fidelity and sustain the PBIS framework measured by the teacher's perceived efficacy of the principal's ability to implement with fidelity and sustain the PBIS framework? And is there a relationship between a principal's efficacy for implementing with fidelity and sustaining the PBIS framework measured by teacher efficacy for implementing with fidelity and sustaining the PBIS framework? Methods, context, and setting. It is my hope that this study will take place using participants from high schools in a large urban school district here in Ohio. The population interest will be high school teachers and principals, and it'll be a convenient sample because they will volunteer to be a part of the study. The variables are overall principal leadership efficacy, principal efficacy for PBIS implementation with fidelity, and teacher efficacy for PBIS implementation with fidelity. Instrumentation. I will use a current instrument developed by Tashana Moran and Garis in 2004, which is the Principal Sense of Efficacy Scale, the PBIS. I will also request permission from Tashana Moran and Garis to modify the instrument to include questions about implementation fidelity in the PBIS framework by principals. I will also use the Teacher Sense of Efficacy Scale developed by Tashana Moran and Wolfwood Hoy. And once again, request permission to include items about PBIS implementation at the high school level for teachers to respond to as well. The analysis, I will take the data collected from the PBIS and also the Teacher Efficacy Scale and overall efficacy for leadership and efficacy for PBIS implementation with fidelity. The efficacy scores from the two sections we compare to determine relationship exists. The perceived leadership efficacy mean score from the teachers we compare to the efficacy score for the building principal to establish or negate a perceptual congruence. Finally, the mean score for the teachers in the building will be examined to determine the impact that the building principal has on the PBIS efficacy for implementation for the teachers. Significance and implications. Currently, research does not exist about PBIS leadership efficacy congruency at the high school level. This study will address this gap and provide data that will help schools begin the discussion on how to close the congruency gap or how to maintain congruency. According to the Office of Special Education Program 2018, there are thousands of high schools implementing PBIS, but the research specific to high school implementation is still emerging. This study will add to the emerging body of literature about how collective efficacy between principals and teachers and principal efficacy congruency impacts PBIS implementation with fidelity in a high school setting. The study will also provide support for a link between principal self-efficacy and school restructuring process, according to Kelleher in 2016. The results can be used by district leaders to identify key resources that will help support principals enhance and extend their sense of efficacy to a variety of contexts. The identified resources can be utilized to help a building close a sizable perceived efficacy gap between the principal and teachers. Principals' thoughts and actions influence the school culture, and research indicates that a principal can have a negative effect during a period of change, according to Kelleher 2016. The period of change is occurring now in high schools, and its PBIS has been adopted, implemented, and now must be sustained. Principals play a pivotal role in any change, and the variables, self-efficacy, collective efficacy should continue to be explored, understood, and supported. Thank you for your time.